Now it is time for our live panel discussion here in the Mac Theatre. Hope you're still tuned in at home and loving it. We're absolutely loving it here on the stage. We're joined now by Elaine Birchall, CEO of the SHS Group, and Sara Venning, CEO of NI Water. They are the only female CEOs in the Ulster Business top 100 businesses in Northern Ireland. And I don't think they could believe that figure themselves, but it is true. The statistic that only 2% of CEOs are women, it basically highlights that this is just not good enough. And more women need to be given equal opportunity as their male counterparts to step up into these leading positions. But what is maybe holding them back doing that? I think we've touched on a few of the issues already this morning. So we're delighted that both Elaine and Sara can join us this morning.
Yes. So good morning, ladies, and thank you so much for joining us here today. It is very much appreciated because I understand you are very, very busy, ladies. So I'm going to start firstly with yourself, Elaine, Chief Executive of the SHS Group. And maybe could you tell us a little bit about your journey to this position that you're in today?
Okay, hi Roseann. Very nice to be here today, even if I am full of stage fright and terrified, but very thankful there's no vast audience there to appeal to. But lovely to be connected with everybody who's signed in today. I'll start with my childhood and my background, because I think that's really where the formative years came. I grew up in County Kildare. My dad was a farmer and my mum was a teacher. So I kind of had this perception from a very early age of, well, kind of people are equal, right? As a child, I would describe myself as introverted, very curious, always stuck in a book, very low patience threshold, you know, and I was very unhappy in school at the age of 15. It was an all-girls school, so I agitated for change. And I ended up in my dad's old boarding school, 400 boys and 6 girls. And at the time, it was what I wanted to do, but I didn't realise how transformative it would be for my life. What I lacked in my girls' school was role models. So, for example, you weren't encouraged to do honours maths, because why would you need that as a girl? Whereas I went to the boys' school, it was kind of getting through all that maleness was an achievement. And we even went on the rugby pitch, because that's what you did to kind of fit in. And then you kind of quickly realise, well, actually, they're as kind of, you know, they've got their issues as well, and they don't have confidence either. And then going into the classroom, because girls are academically better, you just terrified the shit out of them because you did better. And so that kind of started that early confidence that I got from there. And I remember my mum, who just kind of, you know, was going, what is wrong with you? She said, what do you want to be? And I just said, independent. I really want to be independent, in a word, not something particularly. So I then, after I graduated, I went to London, as one did, because there was no jobs in Ireland for anybody, not just girls. And I qualified as an accountant with Coca-Cola, and then went on to Colgate-Palmolive, who I consider to be the mother of my career. And I moved in 12 years, 6 times to 6 different countries. And I guess, you know, that for me was kind of that curiosity that was still there, but also the confidence and the courage that I'd learned as a young girl, going through the experiences that I did.
Fantastic.
Well, if I bring in Sara at this stage, so you're over with me on our socially distanced panel today. So Sara, you are the CEO of NI Water. It was fascinating to hear Elaine talk about her experience. You know, it's that being scared, pushing yourself all the time. But, you know, how did you get to be in the 2%?
Well, I would have to say, similar to Nora, I never set out to be a CEO. I've been a company director now for 10 years and CEO for 6 of them. My family background, I am the eldest of 4 children, and I went in all-girls school. I think being the eldest, and I've observed with eldest, they're often the organisers. I guess my family might say I was the bossy one. So I, from the outset, had that step forward, take the lead drive about me. I also had that drive just to be the best that I could be. At school, I was very science and mathy. That's what I loved. I hated reading English reports, but I pushed myself forward and did well in that, but I hated it. So when, what will I be? People who like maths and physics, when you Google it, you couldn't Google it then. When you look up the yellow sheets, are engineers. So I decided I would go to university and be an engineer. I decided I would be an electrical engineer because that was the one that appealed most. And I went to Queen's. I was one of maybe 6 girls in a class of maybe 110 boys. So we were very much in the minority. But it was great. It was maybe like your boarding school experience. It felt fantastic to be in that group of, you know, a few girls and lots of boys. We just got on with things, and that push just to be the best that you could be. So excelling, I could do the work, and the work was easy. I graduated and moved into a graduate engineering role with Northern Ireland Electricity, and stayed in Northern Ireland Electricity for 14 years. But in that 14 years' time, I maybe had 6 or 8 different jobs, progressing in seniority, and I think I sat 2 interviews. So the whole time that I worked, when somebody asked me, will you do? I said yes. And that's how I tumbled from job to job to job. And I left NIE to go to NI Water, to take up a board position. So I had this notion from a very junior, I suppose as a graduate, I remember getting the annual report and accounts and going to the salary section and seeing these people called non-executive directors who seemed to earn a fortune of money for very few hours, and thought, oh, well, that sounds very good. I'd like to work 14 hours a month and earn that amount of money. So when Northern Ireland Water was recruiting for board directors, I thought that would be good experience for me. I should go for that. And I did, and now I'm here and loving it.
Again, fantastic.
I'm just wondering too about Nora was very much talking about the challenges that she faced with the male boardrooms, etc. That's not coming across to me. Did you feel that you met resistance?
Not that much. So yes and no. I have come across people who are patronising, and people will say, haven't you done well, and you're a woman and you should network with other women. So that's not nice. But that fear of speaking up, I didn't have. Maybe it was because I went through university as, you know, one girl in a class of 100 boys. I have always had that mantra of, I think somebody said it to me early in life, if the question's in your head, ask it. Because if it's in your head, it's in 5 other people's heads in the room. So even when I joined the board of NI Water, I wasn't afraid to speak up. I would speak up and I would make my point. So that isn't something, I guess, that I have suffered from, the fear of speaking.
What about you, Sarah? Elaine?
I think I probably got more vocal, in fact, possibly terrifyingly vocal now for people who work with me, as I got more confidence and I learned more, and I felt I had the right and the experience. And I remember when I got assigned by Colgate to their global HQ in New York, this guy says, oh, the diversity quota has arrived. And I thought, wow, you know, because there were so few women in finance, and I thought, wow, okay, so what do I do here? So, of course, I worked even harder to prove I was there on merit. But more importantly, I thought, I'm not going to let that dude live rent-free in my head and shatter my confidence. And that does take courage. And if I hadn't had the resilience as a younger girl, I possibly would have been more terrified. I also was lucky enough I then moved to Brussels, and it was a project team, so there was kind of a very democratic way of operating, and we had a leader, and one of the first things he said was, especially to some of my US colleagues, don't judge people because English isn't their first language. That is not a way of auditing capability. And he really set up this kind of, no matter what your creed or your culture was, you can contribute. And he had a great League of Nations where we all learned such a huge amount from each other. So I had some very enabling role models and experiences that allowed you to say, actually, it is a democracy. And I listened to what Nora was saying there about, that 32% isn't just a number. It's a quota of women that means that when you walk into a boardroom, there is a banter, there is a sense of inclusivity and belonging that gets you over some of those hurdles. It is challenging to make that breakthrough, the maleness, if you haven't done it firsthand.
And Elaine, you have done it, and you've been hugely successful, and you probably wouldn't say that yourself, but in terms of your success, what do you think has been key to that? And what leadership style do you think you have?
I think there's also, if I think about that inclusivity, was something I learned early. I went on and did another role in supply chain, and it was the first time I had, you know, a senior leadership role with lots of direct reports in different countries. And I thought, how do I break down the barriers here? And I kind of set out that very open, inclusive agenda that I'd learned in Brussels. And some people really didn't like it because it exposed their weaknesses. But I learned that if you can get enough people to respond to that, it rises to the top, and people start to then become role models too at a peer level. And I think a peer level is really, really important in that. I then left Colgate and I went to work for PZ Cussons. I ran their UK business for 3 years, and then they assigned me to lead their African division, which was Nigeria, Ghana and Kenya. And nothing can prepare you for the gender divide that is in Nigeria. And I remember getting there and I needed to use the bathroom, and I was sent to the executive toilets. And I thought, I'm not doing that. And I walked down the 2 floors to the staff toilets, and I thought, no, if I'm going to start off by being inclusive, then I have to do it by example. And you can't legislate for diversity and inclusion. You know, you have to set a belief system, and that belief system starts with you and how you turn up. And because I was senior enough and brave enough, I was able to work on, I can never change the culture, but I could set a level playing field. And I guess I kind of knew it was working when more of the female, younger women started to come back to work from maternity leave, because lots of them didn't at the time. And when I was leaving that job in Ghana, one of them said to me, you know, you're our work mother, thank you. And that was just everything to me. And I thought, this is, you know, the pinnacle of my career in terms of how I can contribute to that diversity agenda, where it was really, really needed.
Fabulous.
Sara, what do you feel about being in that top 100, the only 2? Did you know each other before you came here today?
Well, we've met, yes.
Yeah, you've met, okay.
3 diversity work groups.
Whenever you look at that figure, and I know it is Ulster Business, it is a list in Ulster Business, but when you think you're the only 2, you know, what does that weigh like on your shoulders? To
be honest, I feel embarrassed actually when people say you're the only 2, and embarrassed because I guess what I don't like about it being called out is it starts to set aside, you're the CEO. Are you the CEO because you're female? So back to have the diversity quota arrived, and I've never liked that. I have always felt that everything that I have done, I've got there because of merit and hard work and my capability and my ability. So I have tended not to engage in that conversation because I don't want the conversation to be about I'm a woman. I am the CEO of the company I'm the CEO of because I can do a job, because I do a very good job, and because I work very hard. And those are the things that I don't mind talking about. But I think I'm embarrassed is the word that you would ask to have that.
And it is all about getting the balance right. There may be many people watching this thinking they'd love to consider a leadership role. And you've mentioned the hard work. I sometimes think it's like they think, I don't think I could give all. You'd nearly need to devote all your time to work. Is that a reality of being a CEO?
You have to work hard. So I think that is a reality. You do have to work hard. In my life, how I've done it is you have to be organised. So I have 3 children. I have 3 daughters. They're 19, 17 and 12 now, and I have always worked. So I worked before they were born, and then they were born, and I continued to work. I remember the hiccup of my first daughter and that realisation of, oh my God, no matter how good I am, I was always the best at everything. No matter how good I am, I can't control this. Yeah. This thing doesn't do what I tell it to do, and it doesn't do it when it's supposed to do it. And that sort of temptation of, how can I fit in work and this child? Something has to give. And the voice in your head that says, so it has to be you. And then I can remember just saying, no, it doesn't. There are 2 of us, and it doesn't have to be me, and I don't want it to be me. Or it's not that I don't want it to be me. The conversation was, so I work, I'm going to be working between these hours. There's going to need to be childcare between these hours, and I won't be available earlier or later than this and earlier than this time. So we're going to have to work it out, and we did. And I think that not stopping work that first time meant that you knew the second and third time you could keep going. You could do it. For me, it's about being organised.
And I'm sure that there are actually loads of questions coming in, and there are lots of people for whom that is probably very much a reality right now. And what gives? There's a question coming in there from MT. Love to know more about the balance. For example, do either of our 2% have children? Well, we know that you have 3 children, and you indeed, you've a son yourself.
I do.
Elaine. And did life change when you had him? You were sort of trotting the globe, and did you continue to do that? Or
yeah, I did, and that was a tough choice sometimes. When I remember once I was in Nigeria and my husband was in Russia, and we both thought we were going to miss our flights, and we're thinking, okay, something has to give here, and that was really what made us move back to Ireland, because we'd spent that time away. I think there's a lesson I think that applies to both your personal and professional life when you're a leader. Don't think you've got to do everything yourself. And you can only be successful as a leader if you learn how to organise and delegate. And that broadly applies to your home life as well, because as a woman you tend to think, I need to fix everything. I need to, be there to make the dinner, be there at breakfast, do a great job, etc., etc. You don't, and you can't. And I think, we heard some speakers today that just said, make sure that you don't marry your glass ceiling, that you make sure you've got all the support that you need at home in your personal life, and most importantly, and I always forget to do this, look after yourself. Yeah. Only you put your shit in the calendar. You do that to yourself all the time. But if part of that isn't looking after yourself and your mental and your physical well-being, you're going to run out of road. You will get burnt out. So I do think it is about being brave enough to let go of the responsibilities, and you're compelled to try to want to do everything. You can't. It's impossible. You will fail. So take that great advice of being organised.
Yeah. Elaine, just going back to one of the things you'd said about being senior enough and brave enough when you're in Nigeria, and I think that is key here as to why it is so important that there's more than 2 women in the top 100, because you will make that change. You will bring that inclusivity and diversity there.
So when Roseann mentioned that to me, and I said, well, there's way more women I'm in that top 100 because of the scale of the company I lead, but there's way more women in Northern Ireland that are great leaders, that share the ethos of what leadership is and behaviours is. And I can tell you there's way more women in Northern Ireland that I met that have more impact on the agenda than I do. So I just think it's just we're in that roll call, but there are so many other people that deserve to be in that roll call. Mm-hmm. It's statistic, but it actually belies the amount of leadership that we have here.
So what are you doing for those coming behind? Do you encourage women to put themselves forward? We've heard so much about mentoring already and how vital it really is. What's your view on mentoring, and do you mentor? Have you been mentored? How do you help women?
In terms of, there's a formal and informal way of mentoring, and I think if you are yourself and you turn up with as I say, you can't legislate diversity and inclusion. What you can say is what are the values and behaviours by which I live and die by. I get out of bed every morning for my team of people. I love spending time with my team. I do have a bunch of ladies who pre-pandemic we did something together annually, just so that I recognised how much value. But I think a lot of the things you can do is understand if you're walking by a female colleague's desk that they're juggling as much as you can, and reach out to them and talk to them at a very human level. And I find that very, very easy to do. And also, hopefully, it gives a great message that your door is always open if they've got a problem or if there's something that you want to ask. I remember when I was in New Zealand, and it was, 12,000 miles away from home, and I'd left everything behind me, my family. My dad had passed away that year, so I wasn't in particularly good shape in terms of loneliness. And there was one woman colleague, and she was on completely the different time zone, but she worked kind of the hours I did, which was 9 to 9 at the time, stupidly, pre-children. But I knew I could call her, and I did. And it was just such a fantastic lifeline. I remember being brave enough to call her because she was a really senior woman, and I was there in my little voice going, Lee, I've got a problem. And we ended up talking practically every day. And it was the most amazing lifeline that I had. But you have to be brave enough to ask. And I think also, opportunity doesn't come and knock on your door. You have to say yes, or you have to put up your hand and go, I want to. And if the people in your home or your peers think that they're, you know, that isn't your right, then that's their problem, not yours. Ask, put up your hand, and say yes to opportunities.
I've also heard a great expression that you could say yes if. So you're redefining the leadership role, or you're redefining and making it work for you and having the confidence to do that. I don't know if either of you have any experience around that. Sara, a few comments have come up in here from Cara O'Doherty. I was one of 5-6 women in a class of 80 men in an engineering degree at Queen's. 4 of the females graduated in the top 5 of the class. A lot of what you're saying is ringing true. And also, Sara from Claire Crooks, your comments really hit home with me, as I've just had my first son 15 months ago. I'm trying to get myself back and working in a heavy male-dominated environment. I felt exactly the same way as you. Thank you. You've really helped me realise I'm normal. Whatever that is.
Fantastic.
What do you do then, you know, to help the women coming behind? What's your view on mentoring?
So I've done mentoring in a formal way quite a long way back, and it wasn't necessarily gender specific. So again, I have this piece about equal opportunities, but that picking up with people, talking to people, connecting with people, and connecting on a human level. So asking about the school run, the kids, and that kind of understanding and sharing, well, this is what I done. So, you know, coming back to work, how is it coming back to work? Make all the, you know, the baby dinners on the Sunday night, put them away, freeze them, put the clothes out the night before so that you can get up early, get them dressed and get out. It's that kind of, I suppose, hints and tips. And really, I suppose, in my work is a very male-dominated place as well. So we have, we've just launched an apprenticeship programme, and we're delighted to have 13% female coming through, which is really low, but compared with, we only have 2 out of 500 frontline staff that are female, so that's a great start.
Yeah.
So every little bit moves it forward.
Yeah, we've got to wrap this up, and I hate having to wrap this up because it's so fabulous. There's so much coming in. But finally, you know, just a word of advice for everybody watching right now. If they want to get into a leadership role, what's the one thing they should do, Elaine?
Ask.
Today? Ask.
Ask.
Okay.
Yeah, find your voice. Sharon talked about it earlier on. What is your vision? You know, you got to want it. You really got to want it. And you will have to compromise. You will absolutely have to make compromises.
I didn't even get to talk to you about jumping out of a plane you talked about earlier,
right.
about doing stand-up comedy.
Like childbirth,
It's scary.
once only in my life will it happen.
But it is doing that bold thing. It is scaring yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that helps. What about you, Sara? Bit of advice.
I think I love what Elaine had said, and maybe confidence. So in your head you think you can't, you absolutely can, and it will be hard work, but remember there are only 24 hours in the day. You can't make the day any longer, so you will find a way to fit it in. So have that confidence to know you will find a way to fit it in.
Does it get easier? Because for those who have the little ones now and are making those decisions, do you think that it gets easier when they get up a bit?
No, because then they want to run the roads and they're out all night. It's actually worse because you can control the little ones and you can keep them in the house. When they decide they want to go out and go to pubs, that's worse.
Well, that's not happening at the minute. So we didn't even get into leadership during the pandemic either. I mean, that's a whole other... But I think you've benefited from the time spent at home, you were saying, with your
Yeah, it's been lovely to have, you know, get off that kind of treadmill of travel, particularly when, you know, your children are going through this experience as well in terms of their whole world being turned upside down. You need to be available.
You wanted to go back to the way it was?
I think it can never absolutely get back to that. It will be a rebalance, and I think it will be a healthy rebalance. But I'll go back to what Nora said earlier. We have to start to agitate for the proper childcare infrastructures. Absolutely, because that will destroy any kind of opportunities there are if those struggles start to get reintroduced. So I don't think it should ever go back, but equally, you know, everybody at every sectoral level needs to be thinking about that practicality.
Sara?
Yeah, I agree. It'll not go back. And I have enjoyed the lack of commute. It's been fantastic, and actually that piece of being working in the house and you can get little bits and bobs done in 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there that you wouldn't have done when you were out of the house. So it has been great, but I can't wait to get back to work either. So there will be a balance.
Yeah, and I think, I suppose, you know, at the end of the day, you still are the 2%, and when you look at the FTSE 100, it's 5%. And the stats there is that there are more Peters in the FTSE 100 than there are female chief executives. So it's 6 Peters and 5 female chief executives in the FTSE 100. So it is still a huge issue that we really need to continue to keep the pressure on, continue to do everything to support people, women in particular, to make that ask and to take that step forward. So yeah, really important.
But hey, Elaine and Sara, thank you for blazing a trail, and thank you for blazing a trail to the MAC, to our virtual live event. And I know our audience watching at home have really benefited from your contribution, both of you, today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.